January 20th, 2018. It's Saturday evening in Houston, Texas, a sprawling coastal city of more than 2 million, struggling to recover from the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey.
Hurricane Harvey more than devastated the city of Houston.
You can't really meet someone in Houston that wasn't affected in one way or another by Hurricane Harvey.
The storm's impact is one of the reasons Ethan Brock is on his way to the west side of town to check on his stepbrother, 34-year-old Melvin Maxwell Jr.
Melvin had been living in a hotel since getting displaced by Hurricane Harvey.
It's been a few weeks, and Melvin's family has not heard from him.
Not only was cell service spotty in the hurricane's aftermath, Melvin had also stopped answering his hotel room's landline.
At first it would ring and then sound like somebody took it off the hook. I said, I wonder if he ignored me.
So that's why Ethan went by the hotel to just check on his brother.
There's a do not disturb sign on the door, but his brother ignores it.
Melvin, you in there?
He knocked on the door and nobody came.
Come on, Melvin. Not playing.
That's when Ethan catches the first whiff of real trouble.
His brother smelled something foul.
Instantly, he feels, oh my goodness, what has happened?
Melvin Maxwell Jr. had a tough life right from the start.
Melvin Jr. came into the world fighting. He was premature when he came in. They say he's gravely sick and we don't know if he's going to survive. But he was a fighter.
But he could always rely on the loving support of his family.
I was his biggest cheerleader. I was crazy about him. His mom was crazy about him.
He is my only child. He was definitely a mama's boy. And he was my little guard, my protector.
But it seemed there were always challenges trying to set him back.
He was smaller than most of the kids his age, and he struggled with that for a little while.
He was injured and lost his left eye. At the time, he was 3. And we didn't start seeing how it impacted his life till he got in school. And so he struggled reading.
But his tenacity helped him overcome any obstacle.
As he got older, he started going into football and weightlifting.
He did a lot of stuff, want to be bigger than what he was at time.
But the one thing Melvin couldn't outgrow were issues with his mental health.
He had been diagnosed by the psychiatrist as being bipolar, but he was always trying to do good.
He was diagnosed with ADHD and then schizophrenia.
I did a lot of praying to overcome it, but it started coming prevalent when he became an older man.
Bipolar disorder, ADHD, schizophrenia, none of these are mental health disorders that impact your intellect. It's just about how you're able to receive and give out information.
The doctor prescribed their medications. But as he got older, he started having other kind of mental problems.
Eventually, Melvin's prescribed medication evolved into self-medication.
As he got older, I believe he used drugs and different things to lift him up and bring him down.
When someone has mental illness and they have an addiction, it's kind of figuring out, is it a correlation or is it a causation? And it's really hard to determine which one it is. The correlation is, I just want to numb the pain.
He got hooked on smoking weed, then he got hooked on popping pills, and he was constantly trying to stop, but he never could stop.
But despite the challenges Melvin faced, finding a date wasn't one of them.
He was very attractive, so he had a lot of lady friends.
His first kid was born when he was 16 years old.
But it was far from his last.
He ended up with 7 children. 4 boys and 3 girls.
But while fatherhood came easy, finding a lasting relationship didn't.
He was married twice. His first wife, they got a divorce, and then he married his high school sweetheart.
But that relationship also ended in a separation.
But Melvin never turned his back on his children.
He adored all of his kids, and he was involved in each and every one of the lives of his kids.
He wanted to make sure that they had what they need. He was a good dad.
And he was determined to keep it that way.
He was really struggling. But when he started going back to his doctor, things got better.
Once he was regulated on his medication, Melvin was becoming a productive citizen.
It helped Melvin to become who he wanted to be, a better father, a better son, a better brother, just showing up in a different way than how he had been showing up.
Then Hurricane Harvey made landfall in Texas.
Here comes Harvey, one of the most devastating hurricanes Houston has ever experienced. And Melvin loses everything once again.
He lost his home. I lost my home.
Melvin is already dealing with a lot. He's not just someone that has PTSD from the storm.
Despite the setback, Melvin is not fazed.
FEMA gave him a voucher for a hotel.
Which means Melvin could stay at a hotel of his choosing to get back on his feet.
With the voucher, Melvin moved into a hotel on the west side of Houston.
He says, okay, this is the hand I was dealt. I'm going to keep going.
And by the beginning of 2018, things seemed to be going pretty well.
He's still doing what he needs to do. He's still taking his medication.
So things are looking really good for Melvin.
But now his family is growing concerned after weeks of no contact from Melvin.
Mel, you in there?
You have so many things swirling in your head. Is this person okay?
Come on, man. I'm not playing.
Are they at the hospital? Is he in jail? Did he hurt someone?
And his brother's worry only increases when he notices a foul smell coming from Melvin's hotel room.
It makes him uneasy. He decides to call 911.
I'm trying to find my brother. I came over to the hotel where he was at. I went to the room and I knocked, but nobody came to the door.
And you think he's in that room?
I'm hoping he's not.
He needs HPD to come to do a welfare check on his brother.
But when the police arrive, Melvin still doesn't answer.
Police.
So a hotel employee is called and unlocks it for the officer.
Once they open the door, they realize where the smell was coming from.
They find a decomposing body.
In Houston, Texas, 34-year-old Melvin Maxwell Jr. was working hard to get back on his feet after losing everything to Hurricane Harvey.
Natural disasters can have an everlasting impact on people. But then you add on the fact that he was suffering with mental illness and addiction. Those are two tremendous things to try to recover from. And so he was someone who was courageous.
But now Houston police officers have just found a dead body inside the room where Melvin has been living since the hurricane destroyed his home.
The body's so decomposed, they can't immediately identify who it is.
All they know for sure is that the body is a black male.
There's nothing that indicates foul play.
Call it in. I need the coroner to my location.
But just in case, officers notify the homicide unit.
The police also escort Ethan, who is Melvin's brother, out of the room.
He was overcome with emotion.
Seeing a body that is unrecognizable is devastating because you just hope that, I think that's my brother, but I'm not really sure.
However, when detectives arrive on the scene, they quickly conclude that the body is likely Melvin's.
The room is rented to Melvin. There are prescription bottles found with Melvin's name on it. There's a wallet found, and his identifying information is still there.
There's also a social security card and some credit cards in Melvin's name.
So now they're just trying to figure out what has happened here.
When detectives take a closer look at the body, the level of decomposition makes it difficult to determine what happened to him.
The body's going to have to go to the medical examiner to make the final determination of whether foul play was involved.
Leaving CSI to process the scene, detectives head down to the lobby where Melvin's father and his brother Ethan are waiting.
After the officers escorted him out of the room, Ethan called the family with the news.
I was just devastated. Didn't want to live anymore.
Once Ethan called me and told me that he was dead, I came up to the hotel.
Melvin's father was willing to give the police any information they needed in regards to his son.
Can you tell us when was the last time you had contact with Melvin?
It's been a couple of weeks.
Melvin and his family communicate on a regular basis. They were able to see him during Christmas. They text him during the New Year. Things were going well for Melvin.
The last time that they spoke was on January the 4th.
And then all of a sudden, there's no communication whatsoever.
Initially, the family thought maybe he was having issues with his cell phone.
But they also informed detectives there were times when Melvin would go MIA.
It wasn't unusual for there to be a couple of days where they didn't hear from him.
My son had times in his life where he didn't want to be bothered, so he wouldn't call. And I just assumed he was going through a stage like that.
But then days with no word from Melvin turned into weeks.
They started to become worried, so that's what precipitated the welfare call.
If he has a history of silence, what made you more concerned this time around?
Ethan and Melvin Sr. advised detectives of Melvin's long struggles with mental illness.
The investigators learned that Melvin Jr. had schizophrenia and bipolar. And so, he had his issues that he had to deal with.
On top of that, they tell detectives that Melvin has had to overcome addiction.
Melvin's been going through a lot lately, including losing his house during Harvey.
Maybe Melvin had a manic episode and hurt himself or someone else.
Man, we called to everywhere that we could think of, but no one's seen him.
The family becomes extremely worried.
That's what made me drive up here tonight.
To detectives, it's seeming like Melvin's death isn't the result of a homicide at all.
Did he fall into depression?
Okay, you mentioned that he may have struggled with addiction. Is it possible that he could have overdosed?
Detectives investigating the death of Melvin Maxwell Jr. have learned that the 34-year-old had long been struggling with addiction, as well as his mental health.
Is it possible that he could have overdosed?
So detectives are wondering if Melvin's addiction got the best of him.
Ethan said now he would never overdose.
No, not Melvin. No way.
It will take an autopsy to determine the cause of death. But in the interim, detectives want to know if Melvin had problems with anyone.
After all, severe mental illness and addiction can have a negative impact on relationships.
The investigators want to know who's closest to Melvin.
Did he have any romantic relationships?
Well, he's divorced from his first wife, and then things fell apart with his second wife.
He had just broke up with my youngest grandson's mother, so they were married but separated.
He had also started a new relationship with a woman in Houston.
He decided on a rebound.
That rebound happens to be an older woman, 44-year-old Shaterica Purvis.
Melvin, is that you?
Oh, man, yeah.
Shaterica was a family friend.
What are you doing here?
I'm visiting my aunt, man. How you been?
Good, good.
He met Shaterica because Shaterica and her mother lived in the same apartment complex as my sister.
She and Melvin had known each other for some time, but had just reconnected recently.
We should get together sometime.
Okay. Definitely.
Shortly after that, they became closer friends, and eventually they had a sexual relationship.
But it's not just his romantic relationships detectives have to investigate.
Okay, guys, can you think of any other relationships, close friendships that he might have had? Actually, I believe he was friendly with one of the staff here at the hotel.
She's a security guard. He would come downstairs and he would talk to her sometimes.
All right, guys, thank you for your time. Thank you.
After wrapping up with Melvin's family, detectives check in with hotel management about this security guard.
They find out her name is Janelle Richards.
But she doesn't work here anymore, though.
Janelle had just resigned prior to the discovery of Melvin's body.
Oh, really?
The timing of her resignation is a little suspicious.
Detectives also want to know if anyone has been in Melvin's room recently.
He actually asked us to stop coming in a while ago.
His do not disturb sign was on the door,
which means nobody had entered for weeks.
However, they did notice him come down for breakfast a few times during the new year.
But they don't remember him having breakfast past the first few days in January.
Given that the family's last communication with Melvin was on January 4th, and law enforcement discovered his body on January 20th, it creates a wide window of time that Melvin was unaccounted for.
Hindsight said I should have went to that hotel and checked on him once I wasn't able to get in contact with him for a couple of days. It was terrible for him to sit up in that room all that time.
Back at the station, detectives reach out to Janelle.
Hello?
She's more than willing to talk.
She tells them, oh yes, I did strike up a friendship with Melvin.
I knew that he was there with the hurricane. I would see him every time I was at work.
They would speak from time to time when he would come downstairs to get something to eat or come downstairs for coffee.
You know, you see them almost every day. You talk to them, see how their day is. And so you begin to talk about your life.
Detectives want to know if Janelle ever saw Melvin with anyone.
Janelle states that she did see a woman with Melvin from time to time. She was a light-skinned Black woman who appeared to be just a bit older than Melvin.
Never heard her name.
By all accounts, seems like it matches the description of Shaterica. So when officers asked Janelle if she noticed any friction between Melvin and Shaterica, Janelle says no.
Janelle tells them it seems like everything was fine.
But there was one time where she felt like Shaterica was kind of giving her a little attitude.
He didn't introduce us to anything. She just asked who was I, and he said that's the overnight security.
Shaterica seemed to be upset and maybe a little jealous.
Shaterica was a little bit older than Melvin, and she probably felt threatened walking into where he lives, seeing a beautiful security guard standing there that seems familiar with her boyfriend.
See you later. It was good seeing you.
You too.
Thank you.
Now wondering if jealousy could be the motive behind Melvin's death rather than an overdose, detectives turn their attention to Shaterica.
We just tasked with trying to find out what may have happened to him. I'm calling ahead because we'll be out of the office until Friday. But is there a way we can sit down for about, say, 9:30 on Friday?
Okay, then. I'll see you at 9:30.
Almost a week after discovering Melvin's body, Shaterica arrives for her interview.
Shaterica comes down voluntarily.
Thank you for coming in. Can you tell us about your relationship with Melvin?
And she seems upfront when she sits down with detectives.
She reveals that she and Melvin are in a relationship and that relationship started in November around Thanksgiving.
I hadn't seen him for a long time, but we got together after the hurricane.
Shaterica tells the detectives that she, on occasion, stays with Melvin.
When was the last time you saw him?
It was the night of January 6th.
And there's a reason she remembers the date so clearly.
Shaterica decided to break things off with him that night.
I'm done. I'm done.
Hey, baby. Please don't go.
Shaterica Purvis has just told Houston detectives that Melvin Maxwell Jr. was alive and well when she left him on January 6th, the night she ended their relationship.
Now, detectives want to know what led up to the breakup.
We always had a lot of fun together, but that was a problem.
Her and Melvin were getting high and drunk together.
But then she left because he didn't have no money. She said that he ran out of money, so she left him.
She's frustrated. She tells police that on that night, she waited until about 11 p.m. or so for Melvin to fall asleep. She quietly grabs her things. She goes to the lobby and she calls her daughter for a ride.
Called my daughter, she picked me up, and that was it.
They continue to question her. Has she heard from Melvin since that night? And she says, no.
She had assumed once he woke up, he would understand because my stuff was not there that I did not want to see him or speak with him.
Okay. You're free to go.
All right, thank you.
After talking to Shaterica, detectives make a call to her daughter to confirm her story.
Yes, it's correct. I picked up.
Do you remember by what time?
No, I can't tell you what time because I was asleep. And when she called, I just got up.
She doesn't remember the time, but she does remember dropping her mother off at her grandmother's apartment.
She also tells detectives that she never really liked Melvin.
He's very disrespectful, so I talk to him.
Thank you.
After talking to the daughter, detectives feel like Shaterica's statement lines up.
It also matches the time frame given by Melvin's family and the hotel staff.
Had the breakup been one setback too many for Melvin?
Could he have turned to drugs to drown his sorrows and accidentally overdosed?
But an overdose is definitively ruled out when detectives get the autopsy results back from the coroner.
Melvin was stabbed.
The medical examiner found a 4-inch cut on the left side of the chest and a small cut under the right arm.
It wasn't easy for them to figure that out because Melvin's body has been decomposed for a couple of weeks at this point.
Based on this new information, detectives are again faced with a question.
Who could have done this?
With it being a stab wound and him being found in his hotel, it's got to be a crime of passion. So who would have had entrance and had the ability to be inside of that hotel room. And so now attention goes back to the security officer, Miss Janelle.
Maybe she was friendlier with Melvin than she had let on.
Or was it his girlfriend who, according to her statement, was likely the last person to see him alive?
Detectives aren't sure which avenue to pursue until a call comes in.
Out of nowhere, police get a tip from Melvin Sr. that he has spoken to a lady that lives in the complex with them, which Shaterica happens to be residing in.
The woman's name is Lorraine Wilson.
And according to Lorraine, Shaterica had come to her a couple weeks earlier with a shocking confession.
Y'all, I just killed someone.
What? Investigating the murder of Melvin Maxwell Jr., have just learned that his girlfriend, Shaterica Purvis, may have confessed to the crime.
According to Melvin's father, Shaterica told a neighbor named Lorraine Wilson that she had killed someone.
What? So police reach out to Lorraine.
Hello?
She tells them she is willing to speak with them.
So apparently you had talked with a Mr. Melvin Maxwell Sr.?
Yes, sir.
Lorraine tells them that she doesn't know Shaterica very well, but they would see each other while in the complex. But they also shared a mutual friend who also lived in the complex.
And one night, she happened to run into Shaterica at the mailboxes.
And during this interaction, Shaterica seemed out of sorts.
And she said, "Oh, I just don't feel right. I just not feeling good."
Shaterica says, "Hey, do you know if Felicia is at home?" And she's like, "Hey, I don't know, but I can walk upstairs with you to check it out."
Felicia was their mutual friend.
So they went to the apartment of Felicia Ramos, where she was with her cousin, Walter Ramos.
She followed behind me, kind of like upset.
When they come inside, Shaterica makes a unusual statement.
She said, "Let me tell you something. I just killed somebody." I was like, "What?" She said, "I just killed somebody."
She said she got into it with this gentleman and she killed him.
She got a big mission knife instead.
But Lorraine says she and the other two people in the room were skeptical.
I said, "We don't look like he would have been to the blood." I think she was playing.
Shaterica is known to make these wild stories up, so the majority of the people are just, blowing it off like, whatever.
Lorraine says she left shortly after and didn't think about it again.
It's not until she heard that Melvin was murdered at a hotel that causes Lorraine to reach out to Melvin Sr.
Thank you.
After hanging up with Lorraine, detectives immediately reach out to the two other witnesses mentioned in her statement.
Being a part of an investigation, you have to corroborate statements with other statements.
So police reach out to Felicia.
Did you recall her telling any kind of story to you with anyone else in this complex?
I don't believe nothing nobody say.
Felicia basically says nobody pays attention to her. It's like the little boy who cried wolf.
So again, a second person had brushed it off because it seemed so random.
Felicia's cousin, Walter, echoes her sentiment.
It was late at night and we was having us a good time. So this lady came in and said, "I just killed somebody." Nobody took it serious.
And so now it's three people that feels she's made up something.
Shaterica's statements seem damning to detectives.
You have people that are sharing what appears to be a confession.
But does that mean she is actually guilty?
Keep in mind, this is a person that's known for not always telling the truth.
Or maybe when she told Melvin she wanted to break up with him, things got out of hand.
So the investigators subpoenaed her phone records.
And when the records come back, investigators' suspicions about Sheterica grow.
It turns out Sheterica did not call her daughter on January 6th, like she initially told police.
What they found out was that on January the 4th, in between 11:30 and midnight, Sheterica made a call to her daughter to come pick her up from the hotel.
This also lines up with the last day that Melvin spoke to his family.
They compare that to Melvin's phone records. And again, they see the last outgoing call was on January the 4th. And then there are a lot of incoming calls, but they went unanswered.
So now detectives are left wondering, did she mix up dates or did she lie on purpose?
Detectives decide they need to bring Sheterica back down to the station for another interview to clear things up.
But when they go by her place, they're met with a surprise.
They can't find her.
Sheterica is on the run.
When detectives investigating Melvin Maxwell Jr.'s murder attempt to locate Sheterica Purvis, hoping to clear up some discrepancies in her statement, she's suddenly nowhere to be found.
To detectives, it seems like a clear indication of guilt.
So at this point now, Sheterica is the prime suspect.
And with Sheterica now a fugitive, detectives contact the Gulf Coast Task Force.
We're less than 6 hours away from the border of Mexico. Most officers feel like, hey, we need to let Border Patrol know. And also let's let the U.S. Marshals know just in case she's trying to go on by a plane.
On June 28th, detectives get a hit.
What's up?
They get a phone call from Atlanta, Georgia.
It turns out she did indeed make a run for it, but it wasn't to the border or to Mexico. She was flagged in Atlanta while trying to board a flight to Jamaica.
She was going through U.S. Customs. They checked her name out and found out she had an open warrant for murder in Houston, Texas.
Customs agents take Sheterica into custody and contact the authorities in Houston.
Houston investigators came to interview her in Atlanta, and they asked her exactly what happened.
They are trying their best to get a confession, and Sheterica is not budging.
I told you I didn't do anything. I was just going on vacation.
They continue to press her.
They started throwing in different things in that interview, giving her a little room where maybe he got aggressive with you.
Slowly but surely, they break her down, and she starts to open up a little bit more.
Okay. It was the day of the 4th. We were having an argument about me leaving.
She tells them he came up from behind her and put his hand on her shoulders.
Hey, don't go, please.
Sheterica explains to detectives that she had been assaulted in the past.
She was still a little nervous and skittish about being touched. So when Melvin puts his hands on her shoulder, she freaks out.
And because he wouldn't get out of her personal space, she grabbed a butcher knife and stabbed him.
Get away from me!
What? The knife was one that they kept in the room for cooking.
She stabbed Melvin, and Melvin immediately goes and sits on the bed.
She tells officers that Melvin was still alive. He had sat on the bed. He was holding the spot where he was stabbed.
To Sheterica, hey, this was a minor injury. I just needed to get him off of me so I can leave. She packs up her stuff and she leaves.
I didn't mean to do it.
She assumed that he would call for help.
She didn't expect for him to die.
But for the detectives, her explanation comes far too late.
After giving her statement, her confession, Sheterica is arrested for murder.
In September 2021, Sheterica arrives back in Houston to await trial. And Melvin's family rejoices.
I think she thought she had got away with the crime. I was happy that they finally got her.
I had relief that finally justice would be served, finally that we can have some kind of closure.
But Sheterica will never stand trial for Melvin's murder.
While she's awaiting trial, she took a plea deal. The state offered her 22 years for a murder charge, which she accepted.
She's eligible for parole after serving half her sentence.
We was hoping that she would get 45 years, but we didn't want to really go through that brutal thing of seeing all that evidence.
I don't know if I could have took it sitting up in court, looking at all the gory stuff and all the negativity that would be brought up about him, and he wasn't here to defend himself.
Instead, Melvin's family focuses on healing.
I forgave her for me, so I can live, and so I can continue to love my son and continue to be there for his children. Nobody has control over death. Only God.
Although moving on doesn't mean letting go of the son and father they all loved.
His children are very resilient. Even the baby. I've got pictures all over the house. I talk to him every day about his dad. And so that he knows that his dad really loved him.
My prayers is to give me strength to make it through it. But I'm also a realist. You know, I realize that I'm never gonna be okay. It's heartbreaking. And no parent should bury their kid. It's just against all the rules of nature. It's hard, you never get over it.
Our children are precious, and they can be here today and gone tomorrow. I will always love Melvin Joseph Maxwell Jr., and may he rest in heaven.
Dean Arnold Corll was born on Christmas Eve in 1939 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, into a family that would later relocate to the vast and rapidly expanding landscape of Texas, where the industrial sprawl and suburban growth of Houston provided an ideal, anonymous backdrop for a quiet monster to cultivate his dark desires. As he grew into adulthood, Corll established himself within the local community through ordinary means, working mundane jobs and eventually helping to manage a family-owned candy business that supplied treats to children throughout the region, earning him the deeply chilling and ironic moniker the Candy Man among the few who knew of his familial occupation. To the casual observer, to the neighbors who nodded to him across suburban lawns, and to the acquaintances who crossed his path during daily errands, Corll bore none of the sensationalized, cinematic hallmarks of a prolific serial killer. Instead, he was widely characterized as a relatively quiet, deeply reserved, and polite individual who maintained a remarkably amiable demeanor, particularly toward children and teenagers who populated the neighborhoods where he lived. This facade of absolute normalcy was not merely a passive trait, but a highly effective camouflage that allowed Corll to operate with absolute impunity for years, embedding himself within the fabric of daily life while harboring unimaginable horrors behind closed doors, completely unbothered by suspicion from law enforcement or the community at large. His residential footprint spanned various addresses across the sprawling Houston and Pasadena areas, moving from one modest rental to another, yet always anchoring himself near communities where vulnerable youth congregated, specifically targeting the Houston Heights neighborhood during a period when its economic struggles made it home to numerous working-class families and struggling households. What made Corll particularly dangerous, and what elevated his crimes from opportunistic acts to a systematic machinery of abduction, was his calculated decision to avoid selecting his victims completely at random, choosing instead to engineer a sophisticated and predatory network of social relationships with troubled or easily manipulated teenagers who could serve as his proxies, confidants, and recruiters. By leveraging his outwardly friendly persona, gifts, money, and the promise of a cool place to hang out away from strict parents or impoverished homes, Coral cultivated a small inner circle of youth who did not initially realize the sinister nature of their benefactor, gradually drawing them deeper into his orbit until they were emotionally and practically complicit in his operations. These teenagers were not kidnapped initially. They were charmed, bought, and co-opted, transformed from potential prey into active participants who unknowingly facilitated the capture of their own peers, classmates, and friends. The psychological control Coral exerted over his young accomplices was profound, built upon a foundation of financial reward, adolescent loyalty, and the gradual normalization of deviant and violent behaviors that made turning back or questioning his authority nearly impossible for boys whose developmental vulnerabilities were expertly exploited. Within the tight-knit yet anonymous pockets of the Houston metropolitan area, Coral moved with a chilling confidence, utilizing his unassuming status as a shield against the scrutiny of a society that simply could not fathom that a friendly man handing out candy and offering a safe haven to bored teenagers could simultaneously be orchestrating one of the most monstrous mass murder sprees in American history. The neighborhoods he traversed during the early 1970s were undergoing rapid demographic and social shifts, providing a transient population of youth who frequently slipped through the cracks of institutional supervision, runaway shelters, and local police departments that often dismissed missing teenagers as voluntary dropouts rather than victims of foul play. Coral understood this systemic indifference intimately, utilizing the societal blind spots regarding working-class and runaway youth to shield his activities from view, ensuring that even when boys vanished from street corners and schoolyards, the connective tissue linking their disappearances remained invisible to a police force that had yet to conceptualize the true scale of the predator operating in their midst. His candy factory background provided a convenient cover story for his generosity, allowing him to distribute sweets and small tokens without raising immediate alarms, while his unassuming vehicles, particularly a utilitarian Ford Econoline van, became mobile hunting grounds disguised as mundane instruments of daily commerce and suburban life. As the calendar turned toward the turbulent decade of the 1970s, the stage was fully set for Coral to expand his operations from isolated acts of abuse into a relentless, assembly-line slaughterhouse that would consume dozens of young lives before a sudden, violent explosion of self-defense brought his reign of terror to an abrupt and shattering end. The psychological profile of Dean Coral remains a dark study in compartmentalization, demonstrating how an individual can seamlessly integrate into polite society while maintaining a secret, ritualistic life dedicated to the systematic torture and destruction of human beings, leaving behind a legacy of profound grief and unanswered questions that continue to haunt the collective memory of Texas law enforcement and the families of the lost boys of Houston. Every aspect of his daily routine, from his choice of vehicle to his calculated interactions with local youth, was geared toward maintaining the illusion of a harmless, friendly neighbor, masking a predatory intellect that viewed human lives as disposable commodities meant to satisfy an insatiable, sadistic appetite for control and devastation. The environment of Houston at the time, characterized by rapid urbanization, economic disparity, and sprawling neighborhoods that lacked the tight community cohesion of smaller towns, offered the perfect hunting ground for a predator who knew how to exploit the cracks in the social fabric, turning the very innocence of youth against itself through manipulation, bribery, and psychological dominance that bound his accomplices to his crimes with chains of fear and complicity. Even decades after his death, the name Dean Coral evokes a shudder of horror, serving as a grim reminder that the most dangerous monsters often wear the most ordinary masks, walking among us in broad daylight, smiling, friendly, and completely undetected while carrying out deeds that defy human comprehension and forever altering the lives of everyone unfortunate enough to cross their path in the shadows of the Houston suburbs during those fateful years of the early 1970s when innocence was shattered on an industrial scale that shocked the entire nation and left an indelible scar upon the history of American crime investigations. David Owen Brooks entered the dark orbit of Dean Corll around 1970, stepping into a world that would forever alter the trajectory of his youth and bind him irrevocably to one of the most horrifying criminal conspiracies in American history as a young teenager navigating the complex and often unforgiving social landscapes of the greater Houston area, where he resided with his family. Meeting Corll through casual neighborhood acquaintances, Brooks initially viewed the older man through the lens of ordinary adolescent socialization, perceiving him as a welcoming and generous figure who possessed a comfortable residential space, a reliable vehicle, and a seemingly endless supply of cash, gifts, and treats that held immense appeal for a teenager seeking independence and peer acceptance. However, this superficial charm quickly transitioned into a web of psychological manipulation and coercion as Corll systematically co-opted Brooks, transforming the impressionable boy from an ordinary neighborhood acquaintance into a deeply compromised and essential intermediary who could facilitate the abduction of other vulnerable youths without raising immediate alarms among parents or local authorities. As Brooks became more deeply enmeshed in Corll operations, his role expanded from a passive companion to an active recruiter, utilizing his own social network of classmates, friends, and acquaintances to lure unsuspecting teenagers into Corll's sphere of influence under the guise of casual hangouts, parties, or minor errands that promised excitement and camaraderie. Corll understood that approaching potential victims directly might arouse suspicion or resistance, but sending a peer like Brooks to deliver invitations effectively disarmed the caution of the young victims, transforming the trusted bond of friendship into a fatal trap that bypassed the self-preservation instincts of boys who had no reason to suspect their friends had been compromised by a dangerous predator. For his participation, Brooks was compensated with small amounts of money, food, and gifts, tokens of appreciation that reinforced his compliance, while blinding him to the catastrophic moral and legal consequences of his actions, as the body count steadily rose inside Corll rental properties and secret hideaways across the metropolitan expanse of Southeast Texas. The psychological hold that Corll maintained over Brooks was fortified by a mixture of financial dependency, adolescent loyalty, and a growing, suffocating fear of the consequences should he attempt to break free from the macabre partnership, trapping the teenager in a cycle of complicity from which escape seemed increasingly impossible as the violence escalated in frequency and brutality. Brooks later admitted to investigators that he participated in luring multiple victims, driving them to locations where Corll lay in wait, and even assisting in the grim task of burying the bodies in shallow graves once the murders were completed. Yet throughout subsequent legal proceedings, he consistently maintained a defensive posture designed to minimize his direct involvement in the actual killings, portraying himself as a subordinate actor who was too terrified of Corll to resist his demands. Despite these calculated attempts to distance himself from the direct violence, the sheer volume of evidence gathered by law enforcement demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt that Brooks was fully aware of the lethal nature of Corll operations and actively sustained the machinery of abduction that fed innocent lives into the hands of a sadistic killer. The relationship between Corll and Brooks serves as a chilling case study in how predatory adults can groom and manipulate impressionable adolescents, turning victims of psychological exploitation into active perpetrators who betray their own peers in exchange for a fleeting sense of inclusion, protection, and monetary reward within an environment that lacked adequate social support structures to rescue troubled youth from the clutches of hidden predators operating in plain sight. As the months passed and the grim partnership solidified, Brooks became a permanent fixture in the horrific routine of abductions, kidnappings, and burials that defined the early 1970s in Houston, acting as the primary scout and facilitator who enabled Corll to maintain a steady stream of victims while preserving his deceptive facade of a friendly, harmless neighbor who merely enjoyed the company of local teenagers. The tragic reality of Brooks' participation underscores the profound devastation wrought by Corll, not only through the immediate loss of young lives, but through the permanent corruption and destruction of the souls of the teenagers he manipulated into becoming accessories to murder, forever robbing them of their youth, their innocence, and any chance at a normal life free from the haunting memories of the atrocities they facilitated. When the House of Cards finally collapsed in August of 1973, Brooks was swept up in the immediate aftermath, facing the staggering weight of his complicity as police uncovered the horrific mass graves that revealed the true scale of the slaughter he had helped sustain for years, leading to his subsequent arrest, prosecution, and eventual conviction for multiple counts of murder that sealed his fate behind prison walls for the remainder of his natural life. Within the sterile confines of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, Brooks spent decades reflecting upon the dark choices of his youth, carrying the immense burden of the secrets he kept and the lives he helped extinguish until his eventual death in the year 2020, bringing a quiet and unceremonious end to the existence of a man who had traded his conscience for the fleeting favor of a monster, leaving behind a legacy defined by profound regret, moral failure, and the devastating realization of how easily a young life can be derailed when it crosses paths with an apex predator operating unchecked in the shadows of an indifferent urban landscape. Elmer Wayne Henley Jr. entered the dark sphere of Dean Corll in 1971, introduced by David Brooks at a time when Henley was navigating the turbulent and precarious years of his youth in the sprawling, rapidly changing urban environment of Houston, Texas, completely unaware that this fateful introduction would draw him into one of the most monstrous criminal enterprises in American history. Initially, Henley may have been viewed by Corll through the standard lens of a potential victim, selected for his vulnerability, his youth, and his loose connection to the social networks that Corll ruthlessly exploited to feed his insatiable sadistic appetites. But as the dynamic between the older man and the teenager evolved, Corll made a calculated pivot that would permanently alter the trajectory of Henley's life, transforming the young boy not into a corpse buried in a shallow grave, but into an active, indispensable accomplice and recruiter within his escalating reign of terror. Corll offered Henley money, gifts, and a degree of perceived protection and camaraderie, leveraging financial incentives and adolescent desires for independence to secure his loyalty, while gradually drawing him deeper into the violent rituals that govern the secret life of the candy man behind his polite, unassuming suburban facade. To justify the grim tasks he was asked to perform, Corll spun elaborate and deceptive narratives to Henley, claiming at various points that his actions were part of a vast, sophisticated underground network or a commercial sex trafficking ring that operated on a grand scale. Using these fabricated tales of organized criminality to lessen the psychological weight of the abductions and to make Henley feel as though he were merely a cog in a much larger, inevitable machine rather than a direct participant in grotesque and senseless murders. Although no evidence ever surfaced to suggest that such a sprawling trafficking ring actually existed outside of Corll's disturbed imagination, the manipulation was brutally effective in binding Henley to his operations, normalizing the unthinkable and eroding the teenager moral boundaries through a slow, systematic process of desensitization, bribery, and psychological dominance that made breaking free nearly impossible for a boy who lacked the emotional maturity and institutional support necessary to resist an apex predator cloaked in the guise of a benevolent mentor and benefactor. Henley soon began bringing other teenagers to Corll, utilizing his own friendships and social ties to lure unsuspecting victims into the trap set by the older man, often under the false pretenses of attending a party, going for a casual drive in the Ford Econoline van, or hanging out at one of Corll rental properties where treats, music, and a welcoming atmosphere masked the lethal horrors waiting behind locked doors. As the months bled into years, Henley's role expanded from a simple scout into a fully indoctrinated participant who not only facilitated kidnappings, but also bore witness to and directly assisted in acts of extreme violence, torture, and the clandestine burial of human remains in remote locations across Southeast Texas, cementing his status as a central pillar of Corll murderous infrastructure while sinking deeper into a psychological abyss of trauma, complicity, and terror. The internal conflict that must have tormented Henley during these years was masked by a chilling outward compliance as he walked the streets of Houston alongside his peers, attending school and maintaining a semblance of normal adolescent life while carrying the crushing, horrific secrets of the shallow graves hidden away in boat storage facilities near the shores of Lake Sam Rayburn and amid the isolated dunes of High Island Beach. Corll maintained an iron grip over Henley through a combination of fear, financial dependency, and the psychological trap of shared guilt, making Henley believe that he was equally culpable for the atrocities and that any attempt to betray the partnership would result in violent retaliation against himself or his loved ones, thereby transforming the teenager into both a willing tool and an imprisoned hostage within his own nightmares. This toxic, life-or-death symbiosis continued to fester beneath the surface of Houston society throughout 1971 and 1972, reaching a boiling point in the scorching heat of August 1973 when the fragile, terror-induced equilibrium of Coral criminal empire finally began to fracture from within, sparked by mounting tensions, erratic behaviors, and an inevitable confrontation that would bring the entire macabre enterprise crashing down in a burst of sudden, explosive violence. On that fateful day of August 8, 1973, the dark machinery that had operated with impunity for nearly 3 years ground to a sudden and violent halt at Coral Pasadena home, where Henley, accompanied by Timothy Cordell Curley and Rhonda Williams, found himself locked in a terrifying struggle as Coral attempted to subdue and attack the young visitors, driving the situation past the point of no return and forcing Henley into a split-second decision that would redefine his entire existence. Possessing a firearm during this desperate confrontation, Henley turned the weapon against his tormentor and master, firing multiple shots that ended the life of Dean Coral on the spot and instantly shattering the illusion of the harmless Candyman, thereby terminating a multi-year spree of mass murder through an act of desperate self-defense that simultaneously thrust Henley into the center of a historic criminal investigation. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, rather than fleeing into the anonymity of the Texas landscape, Henley made the fateful decision to contact law enforcement, placing a frantic call to the authorities to report that he had just shot a man, setting in motion a sequence of startling revelations that would shock the collective conscience of the nation and uncover a trail of hidden bodies that defied all previous conceptions of serial criminality in America. As police officers arrived at the scene, they encountered a shaken, traumatized teenager whose initial confession quickly opened the floodgates to a nightmare far more expansive and horrific than any investigator could have possibly imagined, as Henley began detailing the network of abductions, the hidden boat storage, warehouse filled with human remains, and the remote wilderness grave sites scattered across the Texas countryside. The revelations brought forth by Henley transformed him overnight from a survivor of a localized violent encounter into the primary guide of a massive, harrowing exhumation effort that would unearth the remains of 29 young men and boys, laying bare the full, devastating scale of the Houston mass murders and exposing the agonizing reality of families who had spent years searching for children who had vanished without a trace into the orbit of Dean Coral. Placed on trial in 1974 for his undeniable role in the killings, Henley faced the fierce scrutiny of prosecutors who presented overwhelming evidence of his active participation, kidnapping schemes, and assistance in the murders, dismantling any narrative that sought to portray him solely as an innocent captive while acknowledging the complex psychological manipulation he had endured under Coral absolute dominion. The jury and the judicial system ultimately weighed both his status as a victim of grooming and his profound culpability as an accomplice, resulting in convictions that sentenced Henley to multiple terms of life imprisonment, consigning him to spend the next 5 decades of his life behind the secure, unforgiving walls of the Texas penal system, where he would grow from a terrified teenage survivor into an aging inmate grappling with the eternal, haunting legacy of the dark choices he made. During those fateful years in the early 1970s, when a monster walked among them in plain sight, the morning sun broke over the sprawling, sun-baked landscape of the greater Houston area in mid-August of 1973, illuminating a city that was about to wake up to a nightmare so profound and systemic that it would permanently scar the collective consciousness of Texas law enforcement and shatter the fragile peace of countless working-class families. Following the explosive confrontation inside the Pasadena residence where Elmer Wayne Henley Jr. brought an abrupt and violent end to the reign of Dean Coral, the local police department found themselves standing at the precipice of a dark abyss, holding the threads of a confession that hinted at atrocities far beyond the scope of any ordinary homicide investigation. Henley, trembling and overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had transpired, directed investigators toward an unassuming boat storage warehouse located in a quiet industrial pocket of southwest Houston, a structure rented by Coral under a shroud of absolute secrecy that concealed horrors defying human comprehension. When the first wave of law enforcement officers unlocked the heavy doors of that dismal warehouse, they were immediately met with an oppressive, suffocating atmosphere and the unmistakable, haunting scent of death that signaled they had stumbled upon a mass grave hidden in plain sight. Under the direction of seasoned detectives and forensic specialists, authorities began the agonizing task of excavating the earthen floor of the storage facility, unearthing the first shallow grave only to find the remains of a young human being whose life had been snuffed out in the prime of his youth, casting a heavy shroud of grief and disbelief over the entire crime scene. As the shovels dug deeper and the hours bled into the night, the horrific tally climbed with agonizing predictability. By the end of the very first day of excavation, the grim recovery teams had pulled 8 distinct human bodies from the soil beneath the warehouse floor, transforming a routine crime scene response into an unprecedented disaster recovery operation of historic proportions. The discovery sent shockwaves through the upper echelons of the Houston Police Department and local government, prompting an urgent mobilization of forensic anthropologists, medical examiners, and investigative personnel who realized with mounting horror that they were dealing not with an isolated act of violence, but with an industrialized, highly organized campaign of mass murder that had operated unchecked for years. Dawn brought no relief as the exhumation efforts resumed with renewed intensity, unearthing an additional 9 bodies from the same makeshift cemetery beneath the warehouse floor, bringing the total number of victims discovered within that single location to 17 young men and boys whose identities had been erased and whose families had spent years enduring the agonizing torment of unexplained disappearances. The discovery of the boat storage warehouse marked a monumental turning point in American criminal history, forcing law enforcement to reevaluate how they tracked missing persons and how they understood the terrifying capabilities of predatory individuals who could integrate seamlessly into suburban neighborhoods while maintaining a secret torture chamber and graveyard just miles away from bustling commercial centers. Yet, the horror did not end within the confines of the Southwest Houston warehouse, for Henley and his fellow accomplice David Brooks soon began providing harrowing accounts of other clandestine burial sites scattered across the remote, isolated expanses of southeast Texas, expanding the geographic footprint of Coral crimes far beyond the urban boundaries of the city. Guided by the traumatized and cooperative teenage informants, investigators ventured into the desolate wilderness surrounding Lake Sam Rayburn, a vast recreational reservoir where dense forests and secluded shorelines provided an ideal hiding place for a killer seeking to permanently erase the evidence of his depravity, leading to the discovery of more shallow graves containing the remains of additional victims. The grim search caravan then shifted eastward toward the windswept dunes of High Island Beach, a remote coastal stretch along the Gulf of Mexico, where the shifting sands and crashing waves had long concealed the tragic final resting places of youths who had simply accepted a ride or gone out for an evening walk and never returned to their loved ones. Across these diverse and desolate landscapes, the total count of recovered bodies steadily mounted, eventually surpassing 27 and ultimately solidifying at least 29 confirmed victims whose lives were extinguished by Coral and his network of accomplices. Though lingering suspicions among seasoned investigators suggested that the true number might be even higher given the transient nature of many missing teenagers in Houston during the early 70s. Families who had spent years searching for runaway sons, hoping against hope that their children had merely sought independence in a distant city, were forced to confront the devastating reality that their boys had fallen prey to an opportunistic monster who used their economic vulnerabilities and adolescent desires against them in the most cruel and unimaginable manner possible. The identification process was agonizingly slow and technologically primitive by modern standards, relying heavily on dental records, family descriptions, personal belongings recovered from the grave sites, and the fragmented memories of accomplices who often struggled to match names to the skeletal remains pulled from the earth, leaving some families to wait decades for definitive closure through the eventual advent of advanced DNA profiling databases. Public reaction across the United States was one of sheer disbelief and horror, as newspaper headlines and television broadcasts beamed the grim details of the Houston mass murders into living rooms nationwide, stripping away the comforting illusion that such unimaginable evil could only exist in the darkest corners of fiction or remote wilderness areas far removed from civilized society. The legacy of those August days in 1973 serves as a permanent, haunting reminder of the fragility of human safety, the devastating consequences of systemic indifference toward missing working-class youth, and the terrifying reality of a predator who hid behind a friendly smile, a candy factory background, and an ordinary suburban facade while operating an industrial-scale slaughterhouse that consumed the future of a generation and left a scar upon the heart of Texas that time can never truly heal.